Hey there, I'm Amy from thecrazycraftlady.com. I'm doing something a little different today. Normally I film all of my crafts and then I film an introduction for it. This time I'm doing it in reverse. So I have a stack of these cutting mats from Dollar Tree, flexible plastic cutting mats. It's a 2-pack. They're kind of see-through. It's hard to tell because they're stacked up here. I was kind of inspired by this because it seems like every time I post a video on YouTube and it has the word Dollar Tree cutting board in it, usually in reference to the bamboo cutting boards, it does phenomenally well in the algorithm. And I was like, okay, well, I can't keep making cutting board crafts forever. So I'm gonna try the cutting mats, also referred to as chopping mats. So I have a stack of these in the corner of my craft loft right now, and we're gonna see how many different crafts I can come up with. It could be 5, it could be 12. Stay tuned and we'll find out. Let's get making.
For this craft, I just started with an 8x10 picture frame from Dollar Tree, and I just popped out the backer. Pretty simple. And then I took a piece of a Dollar Tree cutting mat and I traced the backer of the picture frame right onto the cutting mat with a Sharpie. And then I cut it out just inside the Sharpie line so that my cut piece of cutting mat would fit right inside the picture frame. From there, I popped out both the glass and the paper from the picture frame, and I pried out the little hardware, the little things that hold the backer into the picture frame. I started trying to just pull them out with my fingers, but then I switched to a little pair of pliers. They pop out pretty easily. And then from there, you're gonna do a thin line of hot glue all the way around on the inside of the picture frame. And then you're gonna quickly, before the hot glue dries, pop in your cut piece of cutting mat so that it stays inside the frame. And then I just took the sleeve of my sweater there, and you just want to make sure that the glass is clean before you pop that back into the picture frame. And then I also secured that with a thin line of hot glue all the way around the edge because I didn't want the glass falling out. And now we need to make a backer for this project. So I had like a shoebox that was roughly the right size for this project. So I took the lid, and it was the right width, but it was too long. So I cut the lid to the shoebox just a little bit so that we could shorten it up and make it match the dimensions of my 8x10 picture frame. So now you can see I cut a little bit, and then I overlapped the two pieces of shoebox lid, and then we have to tape everything together. So I used white duct tape to kind of reinforce the lid because the edges were a little loosey-goosey, kind of falling apart. And then I also wanted to tape, I cut a little bit more length down just so that this box fit properly. And then I taped the two pieces of box lid together with that white duct tape. You'll see here in a bit the reason why I chose white is because I'm going to cover this with white peel and stick wallpaper. So I just wanted it to all look nice and consistent, and there was a white picture frame, so that was kind of the theme. And then I had to cover the whole inside of the cardboard box because I wanted it to be white. So looking back, I maybe could have just popped a piece of white cardstock in the back and then secured it around the edges with white duct tape. But this worked just as well. I used a smoothing tool and my nonstick scissors, and I just cut strips of white duct tape until the whole inside of that shoebox lid was covered. It doesn't have to be perfectly even. It just needs to be white because you want a white background, as you'll see as we add lights. This is going to be like the inside of the light box. So now that whole lid is covered, and then I string in my little string of battery operated fairy lights. Leave enough room on the end so that you can hide that battery pack in the back. And then I just use tiny little bits of that white duct tape to cover the inside of that shoebox lid with the fairy lights. So I just kind of strung back and forth in like an S shape, taping with little tiny bits of tape as I went until the whole string of fairy lights had been secured to the inside of that shoebox lid there. And then I flipped the shoebox lid over, and this is a piece of peel and stick wallpaper from Dollar Tree. You could cover this with contact paper, with craft paper, but I figure why not use peel and stick wallpaper here. And I just smoothed that over just so that the back of the project looks nice. Like, you have this pretty picture frame on the front. Why would you want to see like an Adidas logo on the back? That was just kind of my thinking to cover the whole thing. And you'll want to trim the corners and make sure that you have nice smooth corner edges there. So take your time. And then I also went around and I just recovered the edges with more white duct tape. Pretty easy peasy there. It is, I will say this is a lot of taping and a lot of smoothing, but I think the end result is totally worth the wait. And then I cut out some letters on my Cricut. So I just did the letters Let's Get Crafting in like a black peel and stick vinyl. If you want to buy pre-cut letters at Dollar Tree, or like they have like little wooden letters at the craft store, use whatever you have. You don't need to have a Cricut to make this work. That's just what I used. So I cut out my letters on my Cricut, used transfer tape to then smooth those letters onto a piece of Dollar Tree cutting mat. So we have the cutting mat in the light box, but then the cutting mat is also going to be what we're displaying our letters on. Now, you could do individual letters, like letter by letter Scrabble style. I didn't do this, I just did words because I just thought it would be easier. And then we need to make little ledges for your words to sit on. So I have these wooden dowels that are square shaped that I just cut down to length. I cut all 3 of them at the same length. You could maybe use like a piece of a bamboo skewer or like cut a piece of thin cardboard and then paint it, whatever you like. I just use my miter shears to trim all 3 of my little square wooden dowels down to the same length. And then from there, I just used plain white Rust-Oleum chalk paint and I painted all the way around my wooden dowels just so they would be white to match my picture frame. Next up, I had to cut the rows of my words. So if you're cutting individual letters, go ahead and do that. I just used like a thin Sharpie marker and a ruler to draw lines underneath my words so that I would have a guide when cutting them out so that it would be straight. And then any excess Sharpie after you cut out your little rows of words, you can just clean off with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. Not a big deal. And then the white paint on my square dowels had dried, so I just set the dowels in place and I secured them right at the bottom. So you're going to see I'm going to set my letters there to make sure there's enough space between each row of dowel. You want to make sure there's enough space before you hot glue the dowel in place. But then just run a thin line of hot glue right underneath that dowel along the bottom of it, and that'll secure that little dowel piece in place. Easy peasy. And then the final thing is you're going to assemble. So run a line of hot glue all the way around the edge of that shoebox lid there. Work pretty quickly so the hot glue doesn't dry. And then you're just going to set your picture frame right in place over top of it. And there's your finished little marquee letter light box thing. And then you can just hide that battery pack right behind the picture frame. And I think this is the perfect addition to, I want to figure out how to mount this on the wall in my craft room. Love it. Okay, the only thing better than a craft that uses a Dollar Tree cutting mat is a craft that uses a Dollar Tree cutting mat and a Dollar Tree cutting board. So Dollar Tree recently increased the size of their bamboo cutting boards. They're now a little bit bigger than they used to be. And so I grabbed one of these and I just painted it a nice lavender color because we're going to make a pretty little spring craft. So you're going to paint all the way around the edges of the cutting board as well as the front surface. I did horizontal strokes back and forth just to get nice smooth coverage. This wasn't even chalk paint. This was just acrylic craft paint because I didn't have purple chalk paint because I don't do a lot with purple. And then this is for embellishment later. I took 4 wooden half balls. These are 15 millimeter wooden half balls. If you've watched my channel for any amount of time, I use these a lot. I order them in bulk on Amazon. I laid down a piece of painter's tape face up and I taped it down top and bottom. This gets the wooden half balls to stick in place while I paint them. I just painted them first coat with a little bit of lavender. Then I tried to dry brush over them with white, but I had too much paint going on. So I had to come back with a little piece of a paper towel and then I brushed in a little bit more lavender. I just wanted them to be a little bit lighter in color than the lavender cutting board that they're going to go onto and embellish. So play around however you like. There's no wrong answers here. And then I took a piece of my Dollar Tree cutting mat and I trimmed it down to size so that it was just a little bit smaller than my cutting board. You will also note the cutting board has rounded edges. The cutting mat, when I cut it, had 90-degree corners. I did not do rounded edges. That was just a style preference. You do you, whatever you like. And then I just very simply went into Cricut Design Space and I printed on, I thought this was white vinyl, but in this lighting, it almost looks like a very, very pale lavender color. Just on peel and stick vinyl, a Hello Spring decal. If you don't have a Cricut, you could very easily do like a rub-on decal from Dollar Tree or any other sort of embellishment. You know, in springtime, they have all sorts of little unfinished wood pieces that you could paint and stick on the cutting board. The sky really is the limit. But I just used transfer tape to transfer over my little cut vinyl. And then I smoothed that right onto my piece of cutting mat. So you'll see how that white vinyl kind of pops over the frosted effect of the cutting mat, which I think is super cute. And then from there, I want to secure the cutting mat to the cutting board, but I wanted it to be just a little bit elevated. So I have these foam mounting squares. They were obviously a bit too big, so I cut them down to size, and I put 1 in each of the 4 corners of my cutting mat. Don't worry, they're going to get covered up. I know it looks ugly now. But just place your foam mounting squares, peel off the paper backing to expose the adhesive, and then flip that over, center your cutting mat over your cutting board, and then smooth down those foam squares. Then you have your 4 painted wood half balls. Grab a little bit of E6000 glue, add the tiniest dab to the back of the wooden half ball, and then set one wooden half ball over each of your foam mounting squares. The nice thing is the E6000 glue takes a minute to dry, so you can take a second to finagle the wooden half balls and make sure they're evenly spaced. But here's my little finished sign. If you want to hang this up, I made a similar spring sign a couple years ago. I strung it up with wooden beads. That's an option. Here's one way to display it. But just a fun little seasonal sign. You could make this for literally any time of year with any saying. All right, I made this craft simply because I had a couple sheets of floral rub-on decals left over that they came in a set. I'd used others on previous projects, and I just kind of wanted to use these up because they've been sitting in my craft room for several years now. So I just took my paper trimmer and a piece of a little cutting mat, and I cut little strips. I just eyeballed this. They were maybe like 8 inches tall, 2.5 inches wide, give or take. Whatever size, we're making bookmarks. So if you want to make big bookmarks, little bookmarks, cut them whatever size that you like. I just used my first cut one as a template, and then I made sure that all subsequent bookmarks were the same size. I ended up making 4 total. Now, I did a couple techniques because these are really large decal sheets, as you can see. So on the first one, this is a really large landscape image. So I just placed my bookmark over a section where I thought, okay, this looks pretty good. It's got some tall, some short. This makes its own standalone image look pretty good. And then I traced with a permanent marker the right onto the rub-on decal, and then I trimmed it with a paper trimmer. So I'm cutting through the top protective sheet and the decal underneath it as well. So then once that was trimmed down to size, I was very easily able to then peel off that top sheet and smooth the rub-on decal right over my cut piece of cutting mat there. And then you're going to smooth it down with a smoothing tool and then very carefully peel away that top plastic layer. And with any luck, it should leave behind your entire rub-on transfer. This worked pretty slick for me. And I'm going to show you here a little zoomed in. Here's my little floral decal image on my little cutting mat bookmark. Now for my second one, this was a large landscape image, so I kind of placed it where I wanted it to be. And this one I traced all the way around. So I cut out like a good chunk from kind of the center left of this image. And then I did the same thing where I trimmed it all down to size with my paper trimmer. So I had nice, I think you could cut this out with scissors. I just wanted perfectly straight lines because I wanted my decal to perfectly match the dimensions of the cutting mat, like bookmark base underneath it. I just wanted it to be more precise. And so then I smoothed that right down into place, easy peasy. So this, you have the image kind of poking out from the top, bottom, left, right. It's more like a little snapshot from the image. And then on these smaller ones, I decided to do part of a flower poking up from the bottom and part poking down from the top. So I traced just a piece of a flower that covered probably the bottom 2/3 of the bookmark. And I cut that out and I trimmed it. Or excuse me, I cut it out and I smoothed it down. So I'll speed this up pretty fast. And then for the smaller part that came down from the bottom, I traced that as well. So you can kind of rotate your little rub-on decal however you like so that it's poking down as well. And then once again, trim, peel, smooth, you know the deal. And then it was time to make little tassels for my bookmarks. So I just had an assortment of different colors of yarn from Dollar Tree. It's pretty thin, so I wrapped it around my fingers probably 15 times to make a loop. Cut that tail end. Then you're going to grab another length of yarn and loop it through your loop. That's not unclear. So loop it through and then tie it with a simple double knot. And this is going to hold your loop pieces together. And then you're going to cut another piece of yarn and wrap that around the top of the loop probably 15 times. So this is what's going to kind of create your little tassel effect. So wrap that. I'm going to speed this up here, or maybe I'll play some music. I'm just going to wrap it 15 times. Then when I get to the end, cut it, tie it with a little knot, a simple double knot, cut the tail ends off, easy peasy. And then you're going to cut all the loop ends there, because that's what's going to make the frayed ends of your tassel. So you can trim any long pieces, but you just don't want any loops remaining. And then from there, you're going to hole punch. So you got to be real strong if you want to punch a hole through the cutting mat. It's not super hard. I had to come at it from the front and the back. It also helps, I learned this later, if you rotate the hole punch as you're punching, that helps too. But from there, that piece that I looped through the loop earlier, super unclear, that piece of yarn you can just loop through the whole punched hole in your bookmark, tie it with a simple knot, and then your tassel is attached. So here are my 4 finished little bookmarks, and I don't think anyone would guess that they were made from a Dollar Tree cutting mat. Super fun. Okay, for this craft, I decided to recreate a little stained glass window, sun catcher type thing. So I just went into Canva and I searched stained glass window. You could do a Google image search, whatever you like. And I printed off this design. Then I just cut a piece of Dollar Tree cutting mat to match my printed design. You could really do any design that you like. Anything that has, just like a simple black outline would work. But I just trimmed that down to size, and then I centered my cut piece of cutting mat right over my printed template, and I secured it down with tape, and that way it doesn't slide around at all. And then I have this really thick black Sharpie oil-based paint marker, and I did my best to have a smooth hand and try not to go over any one spot more than once, and I traced the whole template. So I found it easiest to work from top left down to bottom right. So because this does take a minute to dry, you don't want to get any smudge marks. If you do get smudge marks, you can just clean it up with a little bit of rubbing alcohol, no problem. It's just easier to keep it clean in the first place. So I just kind of started at the top left and worked my way down because I'm right-handed so that I wouldn't end up running my hand over any areas with that wet paint. Because this is oil-based, it does take a minute to dry. But also because it's oil-based, it sticks really well to the plastic on this cutting mat. And then, like I said, I tried my best to just go over every line one time and not repeat myself. I find kind of like, dry erase markers, if you go over it a second time, it almost makes it worse. And I just wanted one even, smooth line. So then I let that completely dry, and then I pulled out my Sharpies, and then my camera battery died. So just pretend you see me kind of playing around with, I picked Sharpies that matched the paint colors that I had, and I tried to kind of plan out, here's my rough, it's a mess. It's a rough template of like where I want to put what color paints, just so I have kind of an idea of where I'm going. And then take your cutting mat, flip it upside down. You want to paint. You do not want to paint on the side that has the black oil-based marker. You want to paint on the back of it. And then you're going to take a fine point paintbrush, and this is just a little palette of plain acrylic craft paint. Nothing special. You're just going to water the paint down a tiny little bit so it makes a little bit more translucent on the cutting mat. And then you're going to paint inside the lines on all of your little sections. I will say the yellow and the orange, the lighter colors, were definitely easier and less streaky. The darker colors got to be a little bit more tricky, but it was nothing I couldn't handle. Also, this is not going to look perfectly like stained glass. You're going to see brush marks. That's fine. Like, if I wanted to make real stained glass, I guess I would make real stained glass. So just manage expectations accordingly, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Also, some of my colors were a little bit brighter than I wanted. I didn't have a huge selection of paint at the time. So like, you see that orange there? I was like, oh, that is way too bright for what I want. So I just went back and I muted it down with some of my red, and that seemed to work pretty well. So feel free to get creative and mix colors. It's not the end of the world. It's totally doable. And then I will say here, you'll see the darker colors were a little bit trickier. They were streakier. It was harder to get them to have a more uniform application consistency. So you'll see here, I actually ended up going back in one area and being like, okay, this went on way too thick. So I just took a paper towel and I dabbed away a little bit of that excess paint. And then I smoothed right over it, and I tried to smooth over my brush strokes as best as possible, just to get as smooth, even finish as I could get. No problem. Oh, and then once again, my green was way too bright, so I just took a little bit of my navy. I actually could have taken a bit of my red and muted that down as well, but the navy worked. And so feel free just to pick whatever colors you like. I think this would be a great project to do with kids. You could print out animals or whatever image outline that they like, and then they could paint them. Super fun. And if you make a mistake, you can just wipe it off and try again. But here is like, I was going for kind of like a sun catcher. Yeah, it's a little streaky. It doesn't look like perfectly like stained glass, but if you have like a window that birds are flying into and you want to just like pop something up real quick, or if you want a quick craft with the kids, they can make little sun catchers for their bedroom windows or seasonal window sun catchers. So like you could do like Christmas or Valentine's Day. The sky's the limit. Feel free to get creative and make your own. For this craft, I just started out with a mini wooden crate and some fairy string lights. They usually have these at Dollar Tree at holiday time or Walmart or wherever. They just run on two AA batteries. Then I grabbed this little pin vise tool. It's really handy for drilling on small projects, so I don't have to bust out my regular drill. And since these mini wood crates are made out of a softer wood, it's pretty easy to drill through them. I just started with my smallest little drill bit there and then moved up to a medium-sized one and then finished off with the largest one in my stash. Towards the end, I had to kind of angle the pin vise at different angles to make sure I got that hole big enough. But ultimately, you want a hole just large enough that you can string your lights into the wooden crate. And then I just stained the whole wooden crate with Americana gel stain in the color oak, just all the way around the edge, but not on the inside. So only on the outside, and then that top little edge there as well. But I decided not to paint on the inside because I wanted to keep it as light as possible, so as much of that light from those fairy lights could bounce around. Then once that gel stain had dried, double check, make sure that the lights are working, and then you just string them through that hole on the back of the wood crate into the inside of the crate. And then from here, I found it easiest to actually just turn the lights on so you could see that they were actually indeed evenly spaced. So I really like my fine point hot glue gun here. I'll link to it below. And I added the tiniest dab of hot glue to secure the fairy lights all the way around the inside edge of that wooden crate. And then I just used like a toothpick to kind of like secure the wire into place on the dab of hot glue while the hot glue hardened, because it was the tiniest dab, it hardened almost immediately. But by turning the fairy lights on, you're able to evenly space where the lights are located. So if you have to double back the wire a little bit or turn it into like a tiny little curl so that the light ends up not on top of another light, so be it. But just go all the way around a couple times until you reach the end of your fairy light wire there. And then for this, I just grabbed a flexible cutting mat. They come in a 2-pack at Dollar Tree, and they're kind of see-through. So that's going to be the front of our light box here. So the first thing that I did is I just traced it with a Sharpie, and then I cut just inside that Sharpie line. I didn't go all the way to the edge of the cutting mat because the edges are rounded and I wanted like square edges. Then place that little cut piece on the wooden crate and trim it down ever so slightly until it fits just inside that edge there. You want it to lay nicely but not overhang the edge of the wood crate at all. And then we got to put something on the front of our light box here. So these rub-on transfers came from Dollar Tree, so you can use any rub-on transfer you like. If you have a Cricut and want to cut something on plain black vinyl, that works too. Just plain old sticker letters would work. But I've been wanting to use this Flower Market rub-on decal for quite a while, and so that's what I did. You just smooth it down using like a wooden popsicle stick. I will admit, getting the decal to stick on this cutting mat material took a little bit more diligence than it normally would if you were doing like on wood or paper, but I was able to get it to transfer flawlessly. You just notice like when it changes from black to like a light gray, then you know it's separated from the transfer sheet and it's actually on the surface beneath it. Like it changes color and it has a more matte look, and that's because it's separated from the transfer paper. So just kind of look for that change in color before you move on to another section or peel your transfer paper backing away. But then I just assembled everything very quickly. So I once again used my fine point hot glue gun and some dollar store twine. And I started in the bottom left-hand corner and worked my way around in small sections with the thinnest line of hot glue you can imagine. The tiniest bit of hot glue just to get that twine to make a border around the edge of that cutting mat piece to hide that edge where the cutting mat meets the wood, just to give it a more polished, finished off look all the way around the edge. But that's it, and I have to admit, I think this is probably one of my favorite craft projects I've made in quite a while. Just a little light up box that can be customized in so many different ways. All right, friends, this is a trust the process craft. I'm just going to tell you what I'm doing, and you're going to have to trust that it's going to turn into a lantern at the end. So I started with a bunch of, it's the off-brand Jenga. It's the Dollar Tree Tumbling Tower game. These little wooden pieces have been super popular for the past several years with crafters because they're so versatile. They're a uniform shape, so you can make a bunch of different things with them. So I just grabbed my wood glue and a paintbrush. I find that having a thin paintbrush on these small surfaces gives me a little bit more precise control over where I'm applying the glue. You're going to start by gluing sets of 3 tumbling tower pieces together. So very similar to how, like when I make Christmas ornaments, just 3 in a row, boom, 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 6 sets of 3. Then you're going to make a little square frame. So this is where, a long end meets the short end meets the long end meets the short end until you have a little frame there. right? See that? And then we're going to repeat that process until we have 2 frames. And then we're also going to do 4 sets of 2 stacked short end right on short end. So these are going to be the pillars around the 4 corners of our lantern there. And then on one of the little sets of 3, I just took a little unfinished wood mini cube from a set at Dollar Tree and I glued that right on top. Then from there, we're going to stain everything, or you can paint everything. So this is Folk Art Wood Tint in the color Walnut. It's a very dark stain. I really like it. Now this process does take a minute, and yes, if you can see my left hand, I should have worn a glove. I ended up having to go like wash my hand, like wipe my fingertips off with rubbing alcohol afterwards because it got so messy. So wear a glove if you can. And you're just going to paint all the surfaces of all your little glued wood pieces together. So to stain everything, set it aside, wipe off any excess with a paper towel, set it aside to dry, easy peasy. Now I have all the glues dried, the stains dried, I have all my pieces ready to assemble. Here we go. Start with 4 of those sets of 3. You're going to angle them. So the top left and the bottom right corner are going to be vertical, top right, bottom left corner horizontal, and glue them all together so that you have a larger square made up of 4 smaller squares. This is going to be the base of our lantern. So glue those together, make sure that everything's in alignment, and then grab one of your little square frames, add some wood glue to the bottom of that, and center that right on top of those 4 squares that you just glued together onto that larger square. And then from there, we're going to layer right on top of that another set of 3 tumbling tower pieces right on top of that little frame with more wood glue. Now from here, we're going to add the little vertical pieces. These are going to go at each of the 4 corners of that little top square, and just add a little dab of wood glue at the bottom of each of those 4 pillars, and then just set those in place. And you want to make sure those are really square as they're set to dry so they don't bow out at the top. So to do that, I made my topper. And so the topper is just a wood square with that set of 3 on top of it that I also added the little cube to. So it almost looks like a little handle. So we are not going to glue the topper to the base of the lantern because we want to be able to remove it. But I did set it right on top of those 4 pillars as the wood glue dried so that the pillars would dry perfectly straight up and down the way they needed to. Now, do as I say, not as I do. When I cut my first version of this cutting mat, I made it too big because I cut it before I had assembled the lantern and I misjudged what I needed to do. So I ended up having to go back and make a second one, but I didn't film it. So just go by the measurements based on your actual lantern. You want this to fit inside the 4 pillars. So you want it to be the height of the pillars and then the distance between each of the pillars. So you're going to cut a strip that's the height of the pillar. So this can set inside the 4 pillars to be like the frosted sides of the lantern. So you're going to cut it to the right height. And then you're going to take any type of scoring tool and score 3 lines so that this strip can fold into a little cube frame. And I'm going to show you here that frame is just going to slide right in between the 4 pillars, and that makes the walls of your lantern. Super cute, right? It takes a little bit of finagling to get the walls just right. And then from there, this little lantern is the perfect size to pop in a little Dollar Tree battery operated candle, a little tea light candle. And then you can set the lid right back on top. And here's your little mini lantern made from Dollar Tree tumbling blocks. For this craft, we're going to start with a 4x6 stretched canvas and a little mini wood crate, both from the craft aisle at Dollar Tree. Start with some sort of a razor blade. This is a little fingertip blade, and very, very, very carefully score along the back of the stretched canvas all the way around the back so that you can remove that canvas fabric completely from your little wooden frame. So you can discard the canvas fabric, save it for later, cut it into strips, make ribbon or something. We're just going to use the wooden frame for this project. We want a wooden frame that matches the little mini wood crate there. That's what we're going for. And then we're going to turn this wooden frame into a window. So I used my miter shears and some plain old regular size little popsicle sticks, and I cut them to make the little cross thing in the window that makes the window panes. I don't know what the vertical and the horizontal. I'm sure there's a technical term. Someone in the comments help me out. But we're just going to cut those with your miter shears, and then we're going to just secure them very simply in place using hot glue. So now we're hot gluing the cut popsicle sticks to the front of that little wood frame, not the back side that has the staples. You can secure it in the back with extra hot glue, but we want a nice finished front for our window here. And so here you see I have to layer for the vertical popsicle sticks. I kind of have to layer them here and play around with getting them to lay flat, and here I'm adding more hot glue in the back. And then you want to secure the window frame to the wood box. So I cut a jumbo popsicle stick the width of that picture frame, window frame there. And then you're going to hot glue the frame to the top of the back of the wood crate. Obviously, that's a very thin back of the wood crate, so that window is not going to stand up on its own. That's why I cut that jumbo popsicle stick, and I'm going to hot glue that right on the seam between the wood crate and the window. And that's going to secure that and make that more stable so that the window stands upright on its own. Now, this part is a little tedious. Pop in a movie. And you're going to stain the whole thing. All the nooks and crannies. Just take a little paintbrush. And this is Waverly Antique Wax. I get it at Walmart. Any wood stain you like. Or paint it a solid color. The sky's the limit. But just cover all the surfaces, get in all the nooks and crannies, try not to let the stain pool up in the corners if you can. And then when you're done, take a paper towel and wipe away any excess. This will also help the project dry more quickly if you wipe away all the excess, so that helps. And then you have your little piece of Dollar Tree cutting mat, and we're going to cut this down to size. So I'm using a Sharpie marker. You want it to fit right on the back of the window. So we're going to cut it down to size very simply, and then we're going to hot glue it right in place on the back of that window picture frame there. So just a thin line of hot glue, work quickly before the hot glue dries, and then just smooth that piece of cutting mat right onto the back of the window. Now, this does make for kind of an ugly edge there. So I covered that seam where the cutting mat meets the back of the window frame very simply with some thin, it's a neutral kind of canvas ribbon, just so that the back of my project looked more finished. And it also covered up all those little staples on the back of the window frame from the stretched canvas that was there before. You could also cover this up with twine or braided twine, anything you have, just to make it look a little bit more polished and finished. And so here we have a little window, and we're going to decorate the little mini wood crate. This is kind of Christmas, kind of winter themed. So I'm just going to wrap around the center of the wood crate with some very thin 1/4 inch ribbon. This is just a red ribbon with white snowflakes on it. If you want to do something more generally winter or any other season, feel free. But we're just going to wrap it around the front at first. And then we're going to add a little bow. So for this, I'm going to do the bunny ears method. So I do 1 loop and then a 2nd loop, and then you tie them in a knot. Make sure that both tail ends are pointing down before you tighten the loops. And then you can finagle the loops to whatever size you want, cut the tail ends, and then you can very simply hot glue that bow right in place on the front, centered on that wood crate. Now I have these faux sprigs from Dollar Tree. They're just like winter berries and greenery. You could just do like plain pine and pine cones if you want to do a more winter theme. And I'm just going to cut all of them. You could pop in a cube of floral styrofoam or whatever. I just set these sprigs right into the box. So you're just making a little floral arrangement right inside that mini wood crate. And then to finish it off, you can display this. I set a candle behind it, like a battery operated Dollar Tree pillar candle, so that it looks like there's a light in the window behind your little floral arrangement, just to make this a little bit more warm for the winter months. And here we have all 7 of my Dollar Tree cutting mat crafts in one place. I'd love to hear down in the comments below if you have a favorite or how you would customize one of these projects for yourself. I hope you enjoyed watching these crafts come together. Until next time, happy making. Hey, if you enjoyed watching these crafts, give one of these videos a watch. Thanks so much.